Hello, everyone. Welcome to pwponderings.com. We have a very special guest on the line, the Larry Legend himself. Larry, finally, we get you on a show, man.
Finally, it seems like we've been corresponding for years about me being a guest on the show, and I really appreciate the gesture, and I can't wait to get into this with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate the time. Obviously, it's really busy right now. You, of course, you know what? I've seen descriptions of you online. You're not just an announcer. You are a master of ceremonies. That's what you are.
I,
And
I like that. I like that intro. Yeah, and I always refer to myself as that because there's the announcer and they have their role, but then you have the master of ceremonies, which is just like from everything from entering, intermission, on sale dates, goodbye, drive home safe. Really just catching that entire tiger by the tail of being that big voice to greet you and sort of get you all the pertinent information. So yeah, I like that title of being the master of ceremonies, or to throw it back to hip hop and MC.
exactly. I mean, hey, I could
Yeah.
always just say you're the Bruce Buffer of Ring of Honor, but then
Oh,
most of our
I
listeners
love
would
it.
be like, who?
Yeah, right.
So, but of course, I mean, you know what? You obviously right now, I believe you're well known for CZW and for Ring of Honor mostly because you do obviously a lot of work for them. But I think, and we were kind of talking about this off the air. Some people, if not, a lot of them that follow you, may know you from the Urban Wrestling Federation. Which was a
Yeah.
fun little project that started out, a few years ago. And yeah, well, just tell us how did this get you started and everything?
Well, yeah, the Urban Wrestling Federation was just like you described it, a fun little project that had a lot of potential, um, and I got involved with it primarily by the same way that I've gotten involved with everything wrestling wise and MMA wise, and that's the old adage of it's not what you know, but who you know. And at the time, I had just started actually doing pro wrestling shows in the New York area. For a number of years, I actually was only doing shows in Maryland for MCW and Philly for CZW, but I wasn't a ring announcer of any kind of company in New York, which is where I was living for many years. And what happened was that I finally started doing New York based shows, and I met a wrestler by the name of EC Negro. He was a member of a team called the Dirty Rotten
Yes.
Scoundrels, and yeah, and he just loved my shtick, for lack of a better term, of what I did, being the MC, not just the ring announcer. And he was like, "Man, if there's anything that I hear about, I'm gonna go out of my way to put you on." Now, in the wrestling industry, you hear that a lot, over the years, of people just saying, "Oh, I'm going to put you on." But he was the one who told me that there was a new hip hop wrestling company that was going to be starting up pretty soon, and that he thought that I would be perfect for it. And he gave me the contact of the guy who was putting it all together. I contacted him, and he knew exactly who I was from seeing CZW in the past, and he thought that I'd be a perfect fit, but he just didn't know what role. Because at first he was like, well, maybe we can use you as a commentator, because we really won't have a ring announcer for Urban Wrestling Federation. It's not atypical wrestling, which is what you're used to doing, but we might have you as kind of like a Flava Flav type hype man, MC type thing. And I was like, well, that's right up my alley. I'd love to do something like that. Uh, and ultimately he chose three other guys to be the commentators, and he did have the hype man role for me during the shows. But what was the best or the biggest benefit of doing the urban wrestling thing was that I got to host the preview shows, the Urban Wrestling Federation pay-per-view preview shows, and these were 15 minutes in length, and it really was me just giving like a rundown of what you could expect to see when we were live on pay-per-view, even though it was taped to air live on pay-per-view, but just letting you know what you could expect to see. And all these years later, 4 years later, I find that that's my primary role with Ring of Honor. As far as being an on-air personality, is the hype shows for the pay-per-view with my tag team partner, the lovely Mandy Leone. So I think that you're right that a lot of people maybe got their first taste of who I was and what I had to offer to wrestling as a personality by seeing my start with Urban Wrestling Federation, which it was 2011 that we did that. It was my first time getting an opportunity to announce in the Hammerstein Ballroom. Even though there was only about 172 people there for the first pay per view, that's okay because I really had always wanted to do that venue, and amongst a couple other real awesome things to happen during my time there. I got to announce there, and it was a real fun project. And just like you said, kind of like my introduction to a lot of people who didn't know me as the MCW or CZW guy.
Yeah, and that's just kind of how this all works, right? You work a little bit, and people get to know you, and that's indie wrestling. That's the industry. I mean, it's actually the same in any industry,
Yeah,
but when it comes to that kind of stuff, yeah, I think that a lot of people need from them. Not to say that you were doing stuff like you said in Maryland Championship Wrestling. They have a lot of big things. They have tournaments that are pretty well known on the indie
yeah,
scene, and I actually kind of you've obviously put in your what is it you're I guess paying your dues. Like you said, you were doing stuff in Philly for CZW, stuff in Maryland, and you live in New York. So
yeah.
what can you say? But that's how that happens.
Yeah, lot of Chinatown and Greyhound buses, because obviously, especially in the role of a ring announcer, you're not that high on the pay sheet, So the
Larry, I
cheapest.
don't know what you're saying. Thousands, thousands of dollars.
I mean, you would think that the one that's advertising the next time that you can check out the show or going over to the concession stand and buy. You would think that I would be, but for that level CZW and MCW, I was trying to get there as cheaply as possible, and with a lot of help from other wrestlers. TJ Cannon from the Best Around. I remember for many shows he was my. We would split the trans together to get to CZW and MCW and RCW and different groups. And many times we caught buses together just to keep each other company. But yes, as cheaply as you can travel, that's better because then you yield more return in your pocket for getting home.
How did you even start, like with being a fan of indie wrestling? Because I remember some of I believe it is MCW that does the Shane Shamrock Cups, correct?
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
How
yeah,
did
yeah.
you just get started with all that?
Well, indie. I mean, the first show that I ever saw live was at a park. It was a carnival was going on at a park, and hourly a group of wrestlers had a ring set up there at the carnival, and they would just put on a free show. All you had to do was pay admittance into the carnival, and you could sit down and enjoy the show. I would find out later on in my life that was MEWF, the Mid Eastern Wrestling Federation, which more or less kind of birthed MCW because there was the Mid Eastern Wrestling Federation (MEWF), and then some guys broke away from MEWF and said, you know what, we don't like the politics, don't like the pay. We're going to start our own wrestling school to support a wrestling company, and I I I got involved because MCW used to advertise their wrestling school during Monday Night Raw here in Maryland. And I was savvy enough to realize that if there's a wrestling school, you know, that there may be some way that I can get involved through that avenue of advertisement because obviously they want people to come and pay their money to train to be wrestlers. And I saw these advertisements for many weeks on Raw. I even have some of them still on tape because I used to tape Raw, and I would sometimes leave the VCR recording when the commercials would start. And then 9/11 happened. The tragedy
Right.
in 2001, and I had just actually taken a sabbatical from college. That's how I was. I ended up in New York by going to NYU, and that's how I you know, when I would be doing these shows in Maryland or CZW. I was also a student at NYU, but around that time, 2001, I um I had to I had to take a sabbatical because of financial reasons. So I wasn't in New York when the tragedy happened, but watching it from afar, I made a decision right then and there that, in life, it can end for you in an instant. And I didn't want to have not done everything, or at least attempted to do everything that I had always dreamed of doing if somehow my life ended abruptly. So I went on down to the Bone Breakers school, just like the ad was advertising during Raw commercials, and I basically told the promoters, "Hey, I really don't think that I have the discipline to train to be a wrestler, but obviously you have a wrestling school here, and I see you guys putting these shows on. So if there's any way that I could get involved with helping you with the promotions or all of the things that go on the back end of running a successful wrestling company, that's what I want." And they heard me out, but at the end of the day, they kind of said, if we help you, get you started on the right path, well, you're going to make some connections that are going to take you very far in this industry. So you got to pay to play, essentially, and they charged me the tuition for like a ref, whatever they
Right.
were charging at the time for, to train to be a referee or a valet, which is way less than what it takes to be a wrestler, what it costs. And subsequently, uh, I proved myself that I was not just a, as they would call, people back in the day, ham bone that just wanted to be around the wrestlers and kind of really be like, enjoying the show. And eventually they told me the only reason that they charged me the tuition was to see how dedicated I would be and to see if I would show up on time and help out and do all of the kind of administrative tasks. Yeah, that's basically how I got involved in MCW. First show I ever saw was an MEWF show at a carnival. Bone Breakers, which was MCW school, started advertising during Raw, and after 9/11, I was like, Larry, you've always wanted to be a part of this thing. Go on down there and see if there's some way you can get involved. And I did. And all these years later, here I am. We're talking right now. I'm a guest on your podcast. So that's how I got involved.
Yeah, you weren't a Johnny come lately that just
Yeah,
decided, hey,
not at
let's
all.
try this wrestling thing. What's it all about?
Right,
So
right. I've been watching it for a long time, but around that time, I guess around that 9/11 time, there was a huge boom in wrestling. We were just getting, Attitude, I think, was like at its height in
right.
99, 2000,
And then you had
so
ECW and WCW
sure.
closed down, so wrestling, everyone's kind of eyes focused on what WWE was doing, and that also, I mean, that was kind of a good time also because it opened up a lot of doors. Because not saying it wouldn't have happened, but without ECW, then we wouldn't have had Ring of Honor, and a lot of other promotions actually started up roughly around the same time. So
Yeah.
it all kind of
I think the oldest is Jersey All Pro.
right.
I actually was I got to bet I got to announce their anniversary. Their 18-year anniversary, which is just like phenomenal that
Right.
they've run for 18 years. And then CZW and MCW, I think a couple months apart, they both celebrated their Sweet 16s recently. So
Yep.
yeah, a lot of companies were starting to pop up around that time, and yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm still going. I'm not
Well,
stopping anytime soon.
Well, like you said, as they told you, you would get to go on to do a lot bigger things in wrestling, and so I mean, I think it would be fair to say that starting out with CZW being, I would say, what obviously one of the more well-known independents out there, and that's not a slight to anyone. It's just CZW. They have a brand, people know it. It
Hmm.
can be controversial. It can be kind of, you either kind of love it or some people just don't want, it's not their thing. But
Right.
no matter what, as you said, they've been around 16 years. They're still going pretty strong, and they obviously they have a lot of shows. This past one on 16, which you can catch now. If you're listening to this, you can catch it on VOD. And how has your time been? Because you've been there long enough to see, I believe, kind of different regimes, correct?
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm not. I don't want you don't have to go into too much detail, but it's like CZW. I think under Hyde's regime, say what you will about it, but it has grown. And now there's international business with places like WXW and the Europe tours that they always do. What is your funner moments with CZW? How has it been? Because it is vastly different than what it used to be.
Yeah. When I first started doing those shows, and Zandig was the man, in charge of everything. The best way that I can describe CZW was really scary. And I lie to you not. I mean, the first time that they did the kind of like the lights going out and then a surprise return, was one of my first shows, and Sabian, he's now known as the Black G's, CZW World Champion. Sabian, the Black G's, returned, and just the building shaking, at him doing his Jesus Walks double stomp on. I believe there was like a fake Blackout. There was another team called Blackout, and they kind of had
Right.
usurped the name of Blackout, and he came back just to wreck them, and he did. And I just remembered being really like terrified when the lights went out, even as a member of the roster, and no harm was going to me. Well, at the time, I didn't know what to expect. But I just remember that things were done very kind of on the fly and ad hoc, and there was little or no communication to me, because when I first came to CZW, I was specifically the personal ring announcer of Blackout. So I really didn't need to have too many things communicated to me. But I distinctly remember feeling unease at what may happen to me. Like maybe I might be hazed a little bit because I'm the new kind of personality. So who knows if they're gonna compromise my safety and security, and have me you know get punched by the Necro Butcher. And I say that because I remember that Robbie Marino, who's the manager of the Blackout, I remember there was one time where he got his face beat in by Necro, and I kind of watched that at ringside, and I was thinking to myself, wow, do I really want to get involved with this, and be a member of the Blackout if this is what's happening to, this poor guy, is getting his face beat in. But it was really scary during the time that Zandig was the Hefe, and with DJ, there's a lot more structure. People know what's going on. There's a lot of international business. I've been able to see a lot of young wrestlers get to go overseas, and that's been really enriching to know that I've gotten to see someone like Shane Strickland. I've seen him under DJ's kind of rule of CZW come in and be helping out with chairs and the guardrail and all of that stuff. And now he's in Germany. Now he's in Mexico. So it's like it's very different and a lot more organized and structured under DJ's reign.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say while you were talking about it, I'm like, yeah, you never really know what's gonna happen when Black G's and Ruckus and Joker are in town. You
Oh
really
no.
don't.
Yeah, yeah. And I felt that from just being their personal ring announcer. And I'd go out 3 times, I'd say, during the show. Once to announce Ruckus, once to announce Kingston, because I believe when I first was brought in, Kingston was the heavyweight champ. And then once for Ruckus, and Joker really wasn't. When I first came around, Joker was kind of on the way out. I think he was
Oh,
going to go do another tour of Iraq or the Middle East,
hmm.
because he was doing the military. I don't think he still does, maybe, but
Yeah, I
so
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. I just saw him this weekend. I should have caught up with him, but as is the nature of doing a show, everyone's running around, so but
I'm sure you have a lot of fun. I mean, because there are, hey, one of the names out there, Adam Cole, right now. One of the, he's injured right now, but he's still one of the hottest names in independent wrestling. I'll say in wrestling right now,
yeah.
and where he started with CZW. I mean, you cannot deny that they've trained quite a good amount of talent. So
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, Adam Cole is another one that I've seen who got to grow. See, Cole, I feel like he was bought in under Zandig. I feel like right
I
before DJ bought the
right,
company.
yeah, there's
You
there's a little
know,
bit of time there, sure.
yeah, yeah, but he's another one that has just gone on to have monumental success. But the thing about Cole, okay, the thing about Cole is that, I mean, upon first meeting him, I knew that he was going to be successful because he is a very attractive looking young man. And as long as, and pardon this expression, you kind of keep your nose clean and you don't get involved in like maybe some of the muckety muck that comes with being starting out as a young rookie wrestler. I knew that as long as he continued on the path of wanting to learn and not getting to be like, one of these veterans overnight of the locker room, that he was going to be super successful from when I first met him. So, seeing him and seeing his rise to success, it really it really is no surprise to me. And I kind of almost think that, from the moment I first met him, it was a foregone conclusion that this guy's going to go pretty far. And I do not believe that we have seen him reach his pinnacle by any stretch of the imagination, because he's a very young man and he's got a whole lot left to offer. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
I can see you can see the shades of what he was doing in CZW with Mia Yim, and then of course when he first entered Ring of Honor, he's the clean cut kind of guy. But now, and I'm not. I think he's vastly improved upon the character also, but it's there. You can see what was there, what he used to do, and now he's kind of doing it in Ring of Honor to a much bigger degree. And it's fantastic, and like you said, he has miles and miles and miles to grow. It's gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hoping the best for him, obviously. At at some point while you're with CW, you start expanding out, and like you said, you've gotten now the chance with Ring of Honor. The it's weird to say because it's only like 4 years later, but the new regime under Sinclair, and so now you have a bigger role with them. And I think a lot of people, I would say, were very happy. I remember seeing your Twitter telling when it's like, oh my God, Celebrity Legend on Ring of Honor. Let's hope this all leads to bigger, better things within the company. And now you've been there for a while and you've established yourself. And I think that obviously much congrats to you for being there, and especially where Ring of Honor is right now. They're growing. As of this recording, where they have their pay-per-view 13th anniversary coming up, but Ring of Honor has always kind of been up there, kind of like the CZW, PWG. After establishing themselves for more than a decade, it's kind of, I would say, the pinnacle of where a lot of wrestlers would want to get to, and particularly also announcers or refs or whatever. Were you kind of surprised? Like, how did that come about? Did they contact you and it just kind of came out of the blue, or were you kind of involved maybe with some other aspects, and then it's like, okay, Larry, let's give you this opportunity.
Well, here's something that I've mentioned a couple times before in different interviews, and I kind of feel like I throw myself under the bus, but I'm only being honest. Until I have worked for a particular organization, my knowledge of the company is oftentimes a little lacking. And what I mean by that is I had heard of ROH, especially here in Maryland, because when MCW first closed down, I believe it was back in 2003, the MCW closed its doors, and that was supposed to be the last Shamrock Cup
Yes.
under the MCW banner. There was all this talk about a company called Ring of Honor that was going to be carrying the Shane Shamrock Memorial Cup banner, even though MCW was closing down. And that was around the first time. So this is 2003. That was the first time that I had even heard of ROH, and a couple of the wrestlers, Xavier, Rob Echoes.
Yeah,
They
Robbie.
came,
Now
yeah,
he's
yeah,
Robbie E. But
yeah, they came to the last Shamrock Cup under the MCW banner, and I remember thinking like these guys, really wrestle a style that I've never seen before. I felt the same thing about the Backseat Boys as well when they came to MCW, and of course the Briscoes. And I always kept hearing, associated with these wrestlers that I just mentioned, ROH, ROH, ROH. So I had heard of it for a long time, but I never wanted to really get involved because my involvement in wrestling, besides seeking out MCW from that ad that aired during Raw, has always come about very organically, and I've always been more or less put on to places that people thought that I would do really well in. Just like what I mentioned about Urban Wrestling Federation. EC Negro was like, I think you'd do really great there. Let me turn you on to who you need to talk to and maybe get involved. Same thing with CZW. I announced Ruckus one time for an MCW show. It actually was a Fort Meade Championship Wrestling show. And after announcing him, he said to me, "Man, you've got to come to CZW with me and meet Zandig and be our announcer." And I'm like, okay, what's CZW? That's what I'm thinking in my head. But this guy, at the time, Ruckus came out with like 5 belts, like 2 belts on each one of his arms and 2 on
right.
his waist. So I didn't know who he was, but I knew he was a thing just by the look of it. And I was like, sure, I would love to, and that's how I got involved with CZW and with ROH. what happened was that I remember actually reaching out to Ruckus and saying like, "Hey man, how do you think I could get involved with this ROH? Because I keep hearing about them and how great they are." This is I would say around 2011. I think I was doing I hadn't started doing Urban yet, but I remember Ruckus was like, "Oh, they'd love you there," and I
Right.
feel like he said like Gabe would love you. Like those were his exact words. I didn't know who Gabe was, but he was like, "Oh, Gabe and Carrie would love you." And I'm like, okay, so how do I do it? And he's like, let me see what's up, and he made a couple calls for me, and he actually got in contact with Rhett Titus, and Rhett was like, yeah, man, just have him come on down, and do some setting up the chairs, labeling the chairs, and doing all that type of stuff, and we'll see what can happen, and at this point, doing the bus trips, to CZW and Maryland for MCW, it was like I was thinking, wow, well, I feel like that I might be starting from the ground up, with this sort of trying to get into ROH.
Hmm.
If Rhett is telling Ruckus, for me to come show up at the shows and, set up chairs and label chairs, which is something that I'd done for a number of years already for MCW. And at this point, having been established in MCW and CZW and kind of jumping back and forth between those two, when I inquired about ROH the first time, and Ruckus reached out to Rhett, I wasn't too keen on getting involved. I didn't feel like doing that. I didn't feel like adding that to my kind of rigmarole. Not to mention I'm working a 9 to 5 and living in New York City. So even,
Right. Right.
doing MCW and CZW at the time, it could be kind of a struggle. And I wasn't too thrilled about adding another one into the mix that I would be kind of starting from the ground up and trying to get this opportunity. So I was like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe the next time they're in New York, I'll poke around and see if there's something I can help out with. But nothing really came of that until I found out that Sinclair Broadcast Group, which was based out of Baltimore, Maryland, had acquired Ring of Honor. And it was at this point, living in New York, that I was like, well, wait a minute. Now I've been living in New York for all these years, and now I find out that my home, city and state, Baltimore, Maryland, is now going to be kind of like the headquarters for, ROH. And I'm like, this maybe means that I should kind of start sniffing around a little bit more, and seeing, if there's still, this opportunity to present itself for me to kind of do, this helping out thing that Rhett, and Ruckus had kind of discussed, about me getting involved,
Right. Because there's
so
new owners. It's not like they know you or they're not.
right,
Right.
right. Before, Ruckus is mentioning Gabe and Carrie and how Gabe and Carrie will love me. Now, this is a corporate owned, you know, deal, and they're based out of my home state. So, I kind of started asking around a little bit more about like how I could get involved, and it started to be a thing. Well, you got to move back down here to Baltimore, because you're up there in New York and you're doing the CZW and some MMA, but we really can't really start talking about discussions with you doing something with us unless you're local, So I kind of chewed over that for a little while, still doing MMA and different things, and after 12 paycheck to paycheck years of living in New York City, I decided that you know I wasn't getting any more successful. I had done Madison Square Garden at the time. I just won The Price is Right at the time, and things were going pretty
Yes.
well for me. And I was like, maybe time to say goodbye to New York for a while. Like I lived there from '99 until 2013. '99 to 2001, I was at NYU, so it was kind of like during the semesters I was there. But then from 2003, that's when I moved back to New York as a permanent resident. So I had lived there for roughly 10 years straight, 12 years if you count my time going to school. And I was like, things are going pretty well for you. ROH is owned by Sinclair, which is in Baltimore. Maybe time to go back home and see how the lay of the land is, and see if maybe you can get involved in this company, which you had already kind of discussed, but at the time it wasn't the right move for me to make, and I kind of made the decision that I was done with the New York City living, after 10 years straight, and and I moved back to Maryland in May of 2013. And shortly after moving back to Maryland, I found out that an old friend of mine, Jeff Jones, who I'd known from the MCW days, I found out that he was working for Sinclair, and I kind of told him that, hey, I'm back here. Is there anything that I can do? Do you know of any sort of role for me? And again, like I said, I never really watched any companies before I worked for them. And Jeff had mentioned to me about the house shows, which Ring of Honor did from time to time. And with the house shows, the way that it worked is that a lot of the times they would use like a local guy, to be the announcer, because Bobby
Right.
Cruz wouldn't always travel with them. And it wasn't too long after moving back to Maryland in May of 2013 that an opportunity came for me to maybe ride on up to Bell Vernon, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and help out by being the house show announcer if that opportunity presented itself, and it did. And I'm not gonna lie. When I got to Bell Vernon on May 11th, I did a lot of chair setting up and a lot of labeling of the chairs, and a lot of the stuff that Rhett had told Ruckus I could do to get involved, I ended up doing on my first Ring of Honor event. So but I was given the opportunity to be the announcer for that, and the rest is history. They would just basically say, hey, if there's a house show date, they would give it to me, and I started out just doing the house shows. What was that, May? And by the time June had rolled around, that was our last iPay-per-view, Best in the World 2013. Nobody Fights Like Family.
So Larry, you were saying, you did the pay-per-view, you were doing the house shows. How has that changed with Ring of Honor? The backstage show. I mean, I would imagine that the locker room, when it's a pay-per-view, not to say that the house shows aren't exciting, but there's got to be that extra feeling when you're doing a live pay-per-view, and it's I don't want to say it's more quote unquote traditional, but it is what it is, right? Right? Wrestling on Sunday, watching those pay-per-views from 5 p.m. Pacific my time, but 8 p.m. Eastern. How is the locker room going through that kind of a transition?
Oh, it's I mean, we're pros. So part of the fact that I would just throw it out there that we're pros. And what I mean by that is that when it's go time. And we kind of slip right into lights, camera, action seamlessly. As performers, the real kudos goes to production, because they are the ones who have to deal with so many different intangibles of venues and all of this stuff that I don't even really have a full grasp on, because it's just not my position, and I need to focus on the things that I have to affect. So and I just commend them as a team, as small as they are, because you have no idea how few individuals there are that are in control of lights, sounds, smoke machines, and all of those other different things that make our product pop. They are the ones who really, my heart goes out to in regards to doing a road rage or a set of television tapings, and then a live pay-per-view. But again, we're pros, so we all support one another. And from my first one, Best in the World 2013, No One Fights Like Family, to Best in the World 2014, our first live pay-per-view in Nashville. Everything went off without a hitch, and it was a seamless transition from doing a house show in Bell Vernon to that first pay-per-view, Best in the World, that I was a part of, because of the team. We're pros, so it's seamless of a transition. Really is the best way that I could describe it.
Yeah, I follow Mark Brown on Twitter, and I get to converse with him a little bit. But yeah, kudos to him and his team, whoever they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I think that has been one of the larger critiques of Ring of Honor over the past couple of years. It's like there's and of course perception is everything, as they say, right, in the entertainment
Right.
business. Is that Ring of Honor, they're owned by Sinclair, so people go, well, they're a multi-million-dollar corporation. They own, they have TV in about 37% to 40% of the homes in the United States, and why isn't the production quote unquote better? And I think Joe Koff has said in multiple interviews and even recently that, well, there is that point, but there's also the financial stability of how much money they want to give Ring of Honor.
Sure.
And if you're going to critique the production, you should know. I mean, it's not like they're going to go, "Oh yes, we now own Ring of Honor. We're going to pour millions and millions into it," because
Right.
that fiscally doesn't make it. That's not responsible.
Not at all.
And
Yeah.
so all the credit to Mark Brown, like you said, and his team, because I'll say, they've come a little bit of a way since the whiteout lights on the sides of the ring. And hey, each venue is different, like you said. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to make a plan for it. You have to prepare for it, and that's hard. Um, you were mentioning before that sometimes fans on Twitter, they will tweet at you like if they're having an issue or whatever. I mean, you are now, I think is staunch now into the Ring of Honor, as you would say, the crew, the working crew. What When fans do that to you, I mean, obviously there's you, and you're going to relay that, knock on wood, to the office, but at the same time, there's really nothing you can do about it, Larry. There's only so many hats you can juggle backstage for Ring of Honor.
Yeah. So a lot of the times I don't even respond, because that it's a situation where it's like, there's no right thing to say, just ignore it, So I guess I more or less put myself out there, as the go-to guy that you can always connect to and be able to, field a question. But during the actual event, I'm really only going to retweet, how much people are enjoying themselves and how awesome things are. And then my own kind of like around the ringside area, my own footage. That's really all I'm going to do. I'm not going to kind of address any customer concerns until I'm back in the office on Monday. So I really have taken that kind of pick your battles approach to things. And I'm not really gonna interact with you unless we're really talking about how great things are going and how awesome the moves are and the footage is that the little tidbits that I can put out there through Vine and Instagram.
And those are great, by the way. I mean, I love putting those in our reports up on PWP because it gives fans that kind of interactive look. And I definitely appreciate that you never post the finishes. You only post like really awesome segments between the two, because then it's nothing is quote unquote spoiled. I mean, even though it's 2015 in this day and age where I would think it's kind of expected that spoilers happen, but you know, whatever. I appreciate those because I think it's really fun, and it seems like it's really fun for you as well.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy mastering it as well. Like being able to catch, like for example, from the OI4K versus the Young Bucks match this past weekend at CZW, I was able to get, a dive by Matt Jackson, dive by Dave Chris, dive by Nick Jackson, dive by the ref, and then like three or four super kicks all in one clip. Only 15 seconds.
So, Larry, you were talking about the time. Like I said, it really has been a lot of fun seeing Ring of Honor transition. Doing the pay-per-views, doing the house shows, and you got to have kind of a really fun experience at Aftershock in Minnesota. You got to do some live commentary with Kevin Kelly, and from my perspective, a really underrated Ring of Honor show. I think people when they go on, they buy Ring of Honor DVDs or they get the ringside membership, they want to watch the tentpole shows like the Super Card of Honor, like the Death
Sure.
Before Dishonor. But Aftershock, I think that was a lot of fun. How was that experience for you?
It was a little nerve wracking. Commentary is not really my thing. I do wear a lot of different hats, and I like to consider myself the MC. But getting, it was a nerve wracking thing because I felt like that sitting next to you know Kevin Kelly, who his career has just gone all over the place over these past years, and he's you know I've watched him on every WrestleMania, as a backstage correspondent, and here I am now in that role of being a backstage correspondent for ROH. So it was kind of it was just a really I didn't want to mess up. I think that if you could ever review that, you can hear at the beginning of the show, I'm relatively quiet. I'm really letting Kevin Kelly be in the driver's seat. And I'm kind of responding to things that he gives me, or maybe here or there getting something in. But then as we started finding our rhythm together as a team, you know, I realized that hey, Kevin can't fill all of this sound by himself. I mean he could, but that would mean his job would be harder. So I more
He
or
used to do
less
it on Sunday Night Heat, so he's used to it.
right, right. Did he ever do it by himself on Sunday Night Heat? I thought it
I
was.
mean I think I vaguely I mean mine not, obviously not on pay-per-view nights, but I'm sure
I
there
know
were
he.
times when he had to be the guy talking and then
I know that he's had a few times that he's had to do that for ROH. There's been a
yeah,
few
that
times
too.
where,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, where Carino hasn't been able to be there, and it's been, I think the last time we were at the Masonic Center, I'm not sure which show that was, but I'm pretty sure Kevin was by himself, or maybe Joe Dombrowski. I'm not sure, but
It's not
basically,
easy. I mean, ask Joey Styles. It's not easy to do it by
not at
yourself.
all. So I fell into the rhythm of being his tag team partner. So but at the beginning you'll see that I'm really kind of reserved and not wanting to make any mistakes, but Kevin's just so good at what he's doing that eventually I'd say by second or third match in I'm all warmed up and ready to be a good support for him and definitely learn even more in that capacity. So yeah, it was really nerve-wracking, but I found my rhythm and I'm looking forward to another opportunity to do that, to commentate a live event.
Now, I'd be remiss. It's the time of this recording, and obviously, people, when you're listening to this, certain events with Ring of Honor, that big, lots of news coming out. They have announced already the dates for the New Japan shows. They've also announced the Ring of Honor legend Samoa Joe is returning to the ring. Well, not to the ring, but to Ring of Honor. And obviously, I would say, Larry, you're probably really busy right now at Ring of Honor. You guys are probably getting tons and tons of phone calls. Your people are saying, hey, when's the next show going to happen? Can we get tickets? Stuff like that. Is the excitement level for not just the locker room, but just the company itself? I would assume you're probably riding high right now.
Yeah, it's really exciting, but it's also a lot of work. It's like
There
it's
is
a
that
lot.
part, yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of work, and what it is it's like as we grow, you start to see that there's less and less time to kind of enjoy a wrestling show because you're so busy helping grow the business and make sure that the fans are enjoying the wrestling show. I guess in a lot of ways, the deeper and deeper you get immersed into it, it kind of is a tragic story because you kind of have to detach yourself a little bit from enjoying Adam Cole's matches and sort of making sure that you know everybody is you know can get into the venue, and the tickets are on sale on time, and doing running a lot of interference at the live events themselves, and it's like it's you can't really you stop enjoying it as much because you're working so hard, but the at the end of the day, it's for the greater good, and my partner Todd and I always kind of sort of daydream about the day when we have a staff that we're the ones that are the big bosses and we're making sure our people are in position to be doing what we are doing currently, which is working very hard. And that's the ultimate goal, is to really be a boss, in the Ring of Honor echelon, and have people growing the business enough that we have people that are answering to us. So it's a lot of work, but we know that at the end of the day, there's a light at the end of that tunnel, and we're going strong and we're going hard. So we're looking forward to our next 16 years. I'm sorry, next 13 years. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, let's hope for 16 years. Let's not stop
Oh,
there.
I mean, I have no doubts. I have no doubts. But
It's growing. It
yeah.
definitely is growing. I think that Koff has mentioned in recent interviews also that merchandising is a thing, and I liked how he got into the aspect of what they get on their stations, those stations get to keep. And then Ring of Honor, you guys obviously you want DVD sales to grow, the ringside memberships to grow, and I believe you're a part of that, correct? The kind of you have some hand in the merchandise thing, and with the relationship with New Japan, obviously there's even more lucrative aspects to that. Is it, as you said, it's not necessarily, and you never want it to. You don't want it to get quote unquote easier, but as Ring of Honor grows, I am assuming you're seeing that firsthand, right? You're immersed into the people calling up and demanding more stuff out of Ring of Honor, and it's all content driven, right?
Indeed, yeah, yeah. It's really been an exciting time. There's never a dull moment. It feels like and that's good. I thrive when it's crunch time, because the more idle time that you have, the more time you have to kind of sulk about the way things aren't going, as well as you'd like them. But if you always have something to do, and you always have a show to go host or a show to go help out with. And before you know it, the weeks have turned into months and the months have turned into year, and it will be our 16th year anniversary. So, it's exciting, it's hard work, and but I'm all in, man. I'm all in. So
Have you gotten a chance to, and like you said, you're really busy backstage, but get to kind of, because I've always heard that like the Briscoe brothers, they sell tons and tons of merch. Guys like Jay Lethal, Adam Cole, obviously, but then there's other guys that come in, like the AJ Styles or the Roberto El Patron, who I mean, it's an open. I think we all realize they are there for a limited amount of time, but they are at that point part of the Ring of Honor family, so to speak. Do you
right,
ever get a chance to talk to them, and how has that been?
never.
Ah,
That never really. I mean, let's see, AJ, Alberto. Nope, I've never really gotten a chance to, because they're interacting with so many people
that's true. Yeah.
already that have a closer finger on the pulse of what it is that we need from them, and also are sort of bigger picture lookers at what ultimately we're getting out of them and what they're getting out of us. So, my interactions with most of the roster at live events is quite limited, because I'm really more on the side of, I guess you could say, office, management. Like I don't really get a chance to ride to the shows with the Briscoes. It's funny. I'm actually gonna get to ride. I'm going to Vegas with them this weekend. We all are on the same flight, and we have an appearance in
I expect
Baltimore.
vines, Larry. Many vines and
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You'll get a vine or two, maybe even three for Magic. But I really travel primarily with the office. So I'm doing a lot of
well, Larry, I mean, that sounds like that's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, the Briscoes, I can imagine they're a wild bunch to travel with, so you get to experience that. Yeah, at the end of the day, Ring of Honor is going. CZW, obviously, like you said, just celebrated their 16th anniversary. It's a really fun time. It seems to be you. Is there anything, I guess, any other aspect of professional wrestling that you enjoy, though? I mean, being able to kind of sit back and not necessarily always having to be the announcer. Is there something that you really just enjoy about the business itself?
I guess in a lot of ways, in this day and age, man, the kids really don't have as much of an imagination as I feel like that we had when we were growing up. But the last sort of bastion of imaginative creativity, I feel like, is can be found in pro wrestling. So at the end of the day, I know that there is a heck of a lot more money that can be made doing the MMA shows and the kickboxing shows, but I just feel like that the characters that make up, pro wrestling are really what is going to keep a lot of kids grounded and keep them using their imagination in light of all of the iPads and the PS4s and the Xboxes, where you really don't have to use your imagination because it's all just right there for you. But with the pro wrestling, you still can have those creative juices flowing through the minds of our our younger crowd members. So
Well, who knows when New York is finally going to legalize MMA? I mean, that's still going to be an ongoing thing. So maybe at the end of the day, you made the right decision.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, at this point, I have done a few shows in New York where the promoters have touted that it is an MMA show, and the way that that works is, I believe,
They're
if it
considered
is
amateur fights, right?
exactly, and that's how they can get away with it. There are no pro MMA fights; there are amateur fights, and then also there usually is like one or two of those amateur MMA fights immersed amongst many pro kickboxing fights or Muay Thai fights. So you don't really get a full MMA show, but you kind of get, Larry up there saying, and for the first time ever, MMA invades, or something like that,
Right.
So
I see your Vines from it, man. Some of those fighters, that's still got to be a lot of fun. It may not be under the huge banner like a Bellator or UFC, but it still looks fun.
it is fun, and I got to tell you, they a lot of the times the MMA guys, they don't know my background, so a lot of the times I find it very enriching when they approach me, after shows or when they see me at shows, and they're very excited that I'm going to be the one that announces them, because I don't think they really understand the presentational nature of announcing a wrestling show and how everything is a little bit larger than life in pro wrestling. And when I do what I naturally do at their shows, they feel like I think that they're getting something extra when they're really just getting what it is that I do.
Right?
If they ever were to see a CZW or an ROH show that I happen to announce or any show that I announce, they would say, "Oh, this is what this guy does." But it really is a enriching experience to have them see me come in and be like, "Oh man, you're gonna be the announcer tonight." I know it's gonna be a great fight night now, because you're announcing me, and that feels really good. But yeah, that it is a lot of fun, and it's also kind of brutal, So I've seen some really, really terrible things happen,
Hmm.
in the confines of those cages because we are dealing with some amateurs. So
Well,
yeah,
that is the life of an announcer, right, Larry? And you are, in my opinion, I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, but you are truly one of the better ones out there. So always
thank you.
appreciate your work. So before we get out here, of course, we like to give our guests a chance to plug some stuff, let people know how they can get a hold of you, how they can contact you and say, "Hey, come and announce our show if you can." MMA or wrestling, apparently. You do it for all kinds of things, but of course, you are a busy man. Also,
Yep.
your Vines, your Twitters, whatever you got going.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. So my Twitter is it's really easy to remember. It's BLKLKP. That's BLKLKP. That's where you can reach me on Twitter. And that is linked to my Vine and my Instagram. And the Facebook, I kind of got into some hot water with Facebook. I'm no longer available on Facebook, or you can't find me on Facebook anymore because Facebook wanted me to send in some documentation that my name was actually Larry Legend trademark, which I thought was kind of a fun, name to give myself, Larry
Right?
Legend trademarked. Obviously this can't be real, but I guess Facebook is
Facebook
moving
has
more.
no sense of humor. Mark
Yeah, not at
Zuckerberg,
all,
you're the
not at all.
worst.
I can't tell you word for word what the notification said, but it was something along the lines of to protect the integrity of our Facebook users. We want you to verify by sending us a government issued document, a picture of a government issued document like your driver's license, that indeed your name is Larry Legend trademarked. And I was like, something, I don't think that I really care about Facebook enough to even try to pursue this anymore. So you can't find me on Facebook, but BLKLKP is my Twitter, and that is linked to my Instagram and my Vine. And if you cannot find me on Instagram or Vine, then I don't know what to. Well,
I don't know what
if
you're doing with your life if you can't find Larry Legend.
yeah, I
Trust me.
mean, if there's a show and it's CZW or ROH, and I'm not, and you're not, following me and seeing all these great tidbits of info that I'm sending out, then you're just living under a rock, buddy. And you need to get with it. But yeah, that Twitter handle BLKLKP. I have a like page that still exists on Facebook. So if you want to go to my like page, that's just Larry Legend, public figure. And then also, in a lot of ways, whatever my bread and butter is, I'm gonna plug that as a way to connect with me. So ROHwrestling.com, go to the roster page. I believe that there's a profile for me on there and a way to connect with me on the roster page of ROHwrestling.com. So definitely go there. And for anyone that is in the viewing market, this upcoming week of ROH wrestling on TV is all gearing up and getting ready for the 13th anniversary celebration this weekend in Vegas, and that will be hosted by myself and Mandy Leone. So definitely watch ROH Wrestling on TV. Watch it every week on your TV, and if you can't watch it, on our website, rohwrestling.com, because we're getting ready for our third live pay-per-view in less than a year. So it's really something special, and we want you all to enjoy it by ordering the pay-per-view from your cable or satellite provider, or waiting until I guess it's going to be Monday, maybe Tuesday. I probably shouldn't shoot ourselves in the foot. I'd say by Tuesday, the pay-per-view will be available as a VOD on ROHwrestling.com as well.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, it's been a fun talk. We really appreciate it. And obviously, let's hope it doesn't take a couple of years to get you back on